As you've already probably figured out, I was a fan of Rent Girl and still am.
Thank you.
So Nicole, thank you. When Nicole George's was my first podcast guest, she was like, "You should ask Michell Tea to talk to you about ghosts." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally gonna reach out to her."
Oh, that's so great. I love Nicole. She's one of my best friends.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I really love her.
I'm trying to go to her graphic art little event tonight. You know, like the memoir or
Yes.
graphic memoir
Yeah.
this evening. But yeah, so I was obsessed with that book because I was in love with a sex worker. I mean, I was in love with her from the time that we were 13, and then she became a sex worker because she was an addict. And it's like the 90s. I'm actually wearing my Kindercore kind of outfit.
Yeah, you are. It's so cute.
Respect. But it was a difficult time to talk about like queerness, addiction. I mean, it still is, right? Like people
It still
get,
is, but it's shocking how rough it was in the 90s. And I think that, I just took it for granted during the time. I had already assimilated, I don't know, I'd already kind of developed my own philosophy that like life was filled with terrible people, and like most good people, cool, interesting people who are like living their truths were oppressed in some way. And like, I was happy to be among those people who were like fighting the fight.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I think that it's almost like with the passage of decades and seeing, even though these same problems still exist, it's really different. It's really diluted. It's much better in cities. Like I would say in lots of cities, it's so much more. I mean, I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture because we know too well that the opposite exists. But
of course,
it's so much better that I look back on the 90s now and I'm like, damn, does anyone understand how bad it was? Like it was, but the people in the 60s felt like that,
right.
in the 90s, or the 70s. I mean, it's always there. It does seem like there's the arc,
right?
Justice is real, and we're on it.
Where were you living at that time when you wrote Rent Girl?
When I wrote Rent Girl, I was living in a house in San Francisco that was this really interesting little house. It was like sort of in this little weird borderlands of like the Mission and Bernal Hill. It was like this funny area. It was like kind of around the corner from El Rio.
Okay.
It was really close to El Rio. And at the time, right next to El Rio was this little dive bar called Naps 2. Where was Naps 1?
Right.
I don't know.
Who's napping?
Right. And then I think Nap, the guy who owned it, like sold some, and then it was Naps only. But they had karaoke. Yeah, they had karaoke at least once a week, if not more. And the bar was just like a corridor. And so there was no stage. So they had like the karaoke, television, the prompter like above the door. So you're just kind of standing in front of the door, like singing up. And so when I was in my house, I could hear it. Like I could hear these like bad renditions of like I Love Rock and Roll and like Living on a Prayer. But it was kind of festive. I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where I was living when I wrote that. So there were some stories that had already been written previously as short stories, but that's where I was living when I sort of put the book together and wrote all the filler to,
It makes sense that it was based like in San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
Because I grew up in rural Maryland. So like when someone gave me your book as a gift when I had moved to Baltimore. But did you go, by the way, were you a speaker? You may or may not remember this, at this little tiny bookstore there called Atomic Books.
Yes, I love it.
I was there.
Oh, that's so cool. Excuse me. I love Atomic Books. I love the woman who owns that place. And she still does. Yes. I love that they, display all their annual Halloween, Christmas cards from John Waters. Like everything about that bookstore is so cool. I love like the little vegan restaurant across the street.
Oh yeah, probably Golden West.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Baltimore.
Aw, I love Baltimore too. That's where I'm from.
Oh, that's so cool. It seems like a hard place and a cool place to be from,
Totally. And yeah, Rachel and Ben, they definitely added to like the edge. And actually my former partner always gets invited to John Waters' Christmas parties. So I went for years, I know, as his +1. And Rachel and Ben are always there. So yeah, it's like fly on a wall kind of situation.
bet. Oh, I've been trying to get close to John Waters for decades.
Oh my God.
It's so hard. I don't really succeed. I always invite him to do things. He's always like, no. Like I just asked him to be on. I mean, it's amazing that I even have his email address. I don't remember how I even acquired it, but I treasure it. And I think I'm probably emailing with an assistant, you know, but
oh yeah.
I recently asked him to be a guest on Your Magic, my podcast, and he was like, I don't actually believe in any of that, so no thank you. Which I was like, we could talk about that. Like, I'm not trying to get anyone to believe in anything. It's just, you know, it's always fun stuff to talk about. I mean, at the very least, you could be like, here we are alive. Why? You know,
right. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, that's a conversation we can all, you know, participate in. But what's really funny is I had a dream not that long ago about him where it was one of those very vivid dreams I sometimes have about celebrities, and then I wake up and I feel like I lost a friend because we were so close in the dream, and then like dissipates. But we were so close. We were like almost lovers, even though he was still gay. But it was just like, we just were like, and we were running all over Provincetown together, and it was so fun. And I was like, John, you're going to be on my podcast. Look, this is like, look at our dynamic. Look at our dynamic. This is amazing. And he was just like, yeah, okay. If you're listening,
I think it's possible. I think we can like put it in the lunar magic of what's happening, that it would happen. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, he's like the kind of person that you run into. I mean, at least pre-COVID, you run into at the bar.
Yeah.
You know, and like,
I have a friend that ran into him on the bus in San Francisco. I mean, because, you know, he has a house there. And so he'll ride Muni like a commoner. He'll be there with the Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of lives like in like this, you know, little neighborhood in Baltimore. It is very fancy, but also unassuming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, my first roommate when I moved there was his assistant. So like, you know, it was just like started from way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like Female Trouble was one of those movies I saw as a teenager, kind of like your book, where I was like, whoa, this is possible.
Yeah. Totally.
There's community out there screaming for like, you know, and because of Rent Girl's like kind of acceptance of queerness, but also sex work, and also like all the things that come with like that, you know, kind of underground scene.
Mm-hmm.
I was just kind of like, oh, I'm not a bad person. Like, you know,
like I'm not an anomaly. There's others like me. Like totally. Those works are so important that show you that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that. Thank you.
It's an honor to have done that for anyone, because so many works have done that for me, you know, through life. Yeah.
Like what would you say, you know, was one of those, I mean, besides John Waters, since we already, you know, showered him with.
I mean, when I was young, like when I was a teenager, like I remember discovering like the Outsiders when I was in like 5th grade. That made an enormous impact on me. Really, really enormous.
Like the book.
I kind of understood that like where I lived, we were really working class. Like I didn't, you know, you don't really think about class when you're a kid. You're like, everyone, the whole world is this city. No one's different. Except I did know, because like we watch TV, and you know, no one like us is really on TV. Like everyone seems like they have like money. Even reading Judy Blume books, which I loved so much when I was young, I was always like, oh, these kids go to camp and like they get to buy these. I don't know, like I could just feel that I was looking into someone else's life. And then obviously like I also wasn't living like in the 60s in Tulsa, Oklahoma as a boy, but there was so much in the Outsiders that it made me realize like, oh, like they're like us, and like we're a thing. Like this is a thing, you know? Like this is who I'd be allied with. So that was really, you know, formative for me. Like the bell jar also, you know, just having this sort of like feeling like a weirdo longing in that, the outsidedness of that, living in your head, that this person had such an intense, you know, internal narrative going on was really, I was like, made me understand more that I was a writer, I think, reading the bell jar. It's like, I wanted to write that story. I was like, I could maybe do that. For movies, Times Square was like super, I've written about that. Like Times Square was hugely influential to me as a film.
I think my friend was an extra in that. Did that partially take place? That's New York, but maybe they filmed some of that in Baltimore too. I have to look into that and find out. My friend Bruce might have been an extra.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's so cool. That is so cool. I love that movie very much. Yeah. It imprinted on me in a way I didn't even unpack, I feel like, until like 5 years ago.
I think
'Cause,
I
like,
need to rewatch that.
yeah, I mean, the like butch femme dynamic of the two main characters is so interesting, and like just the sort of assumption that I think that I grew up with just understanding that anybody that I felt desire for would necessarily like have mental health issues, because I was attracted to people who, so it happened, the world was really hard on, you know.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because that's sort of the dynamic that's at play, in that movie, where it's not just a class difference. There's like a gender, like one girl has gender privilege over the other girl, as well as
Right.
this class privilege. One girl is unhoused. The other girl's dad is running for like, mayor of New York. She's super privileged. Yeah, it's such an interesting movie. It has a horrible ending.
Yeah. So
But
many of our stories do, unfortunately.
I think they thought they were giving it a good ending just because, like, no one died. You know what I mean? But, like, Pammy, the privileged girl, totally, in my opinion, betrays Nikki, or at least reveals that she was sort of slumming after all. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to write that down in my notes because I need to rewatch that.
It's a great rewatch. It's hard to find. I think you can watch it in its entirety on YouTube, but it's very dark. I have a DVD of it that I stole from an ex, unrepentantly. But so DVDs of it exist,
Yeah, I'll see what's out there. I mean, I think that lends to, like, which is one of my kind of topics a lot, is like queer grief, which is very specific, like all the things that you just were talking about, those disparities, and then also like, even like we were saying, like recognizing that exists, that kind of love is possible. Like, I think I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel so, and I was saying this to my wife last night, like we're really used to like our own deal. And then when you like start talking to other people and you're like, oh, they don't have the same concerns that we do.
Yeah.
Especially like back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been hit with those like revelations like periodically throughout my life. Like, I found when I was a teenager, I had this really amazing thing happen where I turned a corner, literally walking through Boston, and in front of the Boston Public Library was literally like 30 goth kids, like goth, art fag,
Right.
like artsy, weird, new, I don't know, whatever, we didn't know what to call ourselves.
Progressive. Remember that was a word for a while.
Alternative. I remember somebody like, we're alternative. I was like, okay. So they were punk, skaters. They were all there. And I was like, oh, what? My head exploded, and I became part of this community that was really sustaining to me, because there wasn't anyone like me, in my city or at my high school. I was like the only weirdo, but I found, community with all these people who were also looking for other weirdos, because they were maybe the only ones at their school. And it was kids from all over Massachusetts. Like, there were a lot of kids from Boston, but there were kids from the North Shore who'd taken the train in, and it's like a choo-choo train, like a commuter rail from, not a subway, from like the outskirts, from Salem or, out there. But then I remember at some point realizing like, like they were not entirely, but largely like middle class at the very least. And I remember realizing like, oh, like going to their houses and be like, whoa, like this is different, so that was interesting. Yeah.
That was one of my questions I had for you, because I love that picture, that I had to share of you as a goth teen.
I love it too. Thank you for putting it out there.
So good. So Robert Smith, you know, like, or Susie,
all of them.
Arriving. Just because there is this sort of like, again, connection with like, I feel like with goth, witch, death, queer, like for some reason we have all these intersections very easily.
Yeah.
Like reading The Bell Jar and being like, that book really touches me, like that's a choice, that's not everybody's like cup of tea. So
Totally. Yeah.
But I loved it too. I was like, oh my God, I feel deeply for this person.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I don't really know how. I mean, I love Sylvia Plath anyway.
Mhm.
But yeah, that kind of feeling of like isolation and like in your own head, echo chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is about these intersections, but I was like, of course you were goth. That makes a lot of sense.
I was a very happy goth that accented with pink on occasion.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of like I was really attracted to. I mean, I liked all the kinds of goth. I was really like, oh, there's like a Victorian goth, and then there's like an industrial goth, and then there's like a glam rock goth. There was like all these different sort of iterations of goth, and then there was also this sort of like new romantic goth. It was maybe kind of like the Victorian. I really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked the glam rock goth. I wasn't as much into the industrial goth.
Same.
Yeah.
I'm still like fine, like I'm appreciative that that's there.
Totally.
People are into it, but that's same.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think I basically really liked pop music. It just was like a pop music that like wasn't on the radio. You know what I mean? Like a lot of goth music is kind of pop music.
It's true. And now they call that pastel goth.
Oh,
which I really, I do too. It's sweet.
Yeah.
Because it's not all like, blood dripping, coffin.
Right. I really loved Gene Loves Jezebel in the 80s because I was
yeah.
They're wearing like, they brought some color in, I liked that.
Definitely. And I think
I liked it. Yeah.
That like, romanticism of England.
Yes. Yes, I do.
By the way, one of the organizers, I think, is here. Hi, Joe, if you're listening. Yeah, like totally being like, I'm going to move to England and get the fuck away from this stupid.
I went to England when I was 18 years old, and I couldn't. You did? It felt like a homeland pilgrimage, which I guess it is. I mean, I am actually like I have British ancestry, but that wasn't what I was thinking about. I was thinking about like, how can I go to a goth club?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool that you did that.
I loved it. I was like, wow. I went to Oxford for a theater program. And then I was telling Joe's like, yeah, you should both come. We will.
I want you so badly. Thank you.
Yeah. Yay. We want to. Yeah, I just remember like going there and thinking this is more provincial than what I was expecting, but like provincial in the best possible setting. There's like, it's so gorgeous. It's where Alice in Wonderland was written, of course.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Fringe Festival, which is kind of what I think this, when I was talking to the organizers, Joe and Victoria, this is that kind of feeling, but in virtual reality version.
Yeah.
Walk in any room and it's like, oh, cool. You're talking about this or doing that. And no problem. Yeah. That's the kind of goth that I feel like I still am. But I guess speaking of goth, were you engaged at the Hollywood Forever cemetery?
Yeah.
My notes.
My fiance, our real first date was at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which he knows very well. And we met there and he kind of took me on a tour. And it was really fun. And it was during COVID and we were masked and trying to stay 6 feet away from each other. And then, he proposed to me there.
Aww.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it was so funny. There was like, right by where he proposed to me, there was this giant hearse. And normally he's the kind of person that if he sees a big hearse, he's all like, oh, wow. He gets heart eyes and he's like, and he just was sort of like almost ignoring it. And I was just like, did you notice that? And he's like, yeah, he was kind of like, did you notice it? Cause then on the back, there was this in the back window.
Oh, I know. I love that.
Tombstone. It says just engaged with our names. I know. It was so sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
Really sweet. And then that photo of you driving, I was like, of course, everyone.
Which is hilarious because I actually can't drive.
You can't?
I don't have a driver's license, but I do have my permit right now, and I'm learning how to drive. And I actually have my 4th driver's lesson after this conference today.
Awesome. I'm
Yeah.
honored. You
So
know,
I was posing. I was a total poser in that picture. Yeah.
I hate driving. I do it because it's like a necessity in California.
Yeah.
But like driving here is really scary as you have experienced just being a person. And I mean, where you live is like, you know, it's like future lands of driving.
Glendale, where I live, is famous for having just like aggressively awful drivers who, it's not that they don't know how to drive, they just don't care. And it's like wild. And they're like, if you're actually obeying the rules of the road, they will like be behind you, like leaning on their horn, being like, how dare you stop at a red light? You're, you know, slowing me down. It's crazy.
That's really scary. I
Yeah.
actually didn't get my driver's license until I was about 18, and my my whole family raised this money for me to go to England. And my agreement with my mom and my stepdad was that I would learn how to drive, because they were like, what are you going to do? You're not going to live in rural Maryland, you know, like for the rest of your life. So I
You're
did
like,
learn
I'm going to
how.
move to a city with a subway system. Duh.
Hello. Yeah. And even though Baltimore has really crappy public transportation, it still exists and it's a walkable city, you know, and for years I didn't drive. So I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I just started driving recently here and actually
Wow.
did drive to LA and back during the summer. And
I love hearing about other people who like don't quite drive or like have these weird drive stories, because it makes me feel like I can do it, you know.
you can. Yeah, we went to Pasadena and then we were turning around to leave and it's like, oh, 55 minutes back, no problem, like 11 p.m. and the freeway shut down. Closed.
So LA, like,
so creepy.
so did you have to take streets all the way back to Orange County?
We just had to wait for 3 hours. Honestly, it was the most stressful. And 2 of my friends who are artists that are from Baltimore, luckily, like family, you know, like chosen family. And my wife and I were just like cracking up the whole time. Because I'm like, of course,
that's cool. At least you were hanging out with cool people.
Oh, yeah. We were telling all kinds of crazy stories. But yeah, that kind of anxiety is something that, yeah, it gets to me. But my wife learned how to drive on the Autobahn because she grew up part-time in Germany.
Oh,
so she's like
she's
one
a
of
race
those.
car driver, basically.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Like we have
that's
a Les
cool.
Guru, but she still drives it. Like, you know, she's
that's rad.
She's like, no problem. So you do tarot, and one of the questions I have for you was, do you do tarot like to deal with death anxiety, or not necessarily, but I'm still kind of a dabbler, you know. People often send me decks as
it's the best. Yeah,
but I'm not like a, you know, not a reader.
You know, I have such a weird relationship to death anxiety. I think I'm sort of like a masochist. I think that my response was a little masochistic, which is not my intention, but it's almost like if I'm having death anxiety, I don't want to relieve it. I want to sort of tunnel through it. It's like if I went to the tarot, it's like I would almost be wanting it to tell me like everything's okay, you know, and it's like, well, maybe everything's not okay. Like, you know, and it's just like, maybe I want to sit with that instead of just like looking for, you know, I mean, as a tarot reader, you get asked a lot. People will just be like, I just want to know if I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, well, no, you won't be. And you also will be, and you won't be. And it's like, I don't love that question for the tarot, you know?
Right.
Because I just don't think that's what it's not there to comfort us, you know?
Right.
And, you know, and when someone's like, will I be okay? It's like, well, there's only one answer that you want from that. You know what I mean? It's like, and what does it mean to be okay? And can you be okay with not being okay? Like, sometimes that is the challenge, you know? It's like, it's not like, is life going to be okay for you? Like, are you going to be okay with whatever life throws at you? I think that's the ideal, you know, spiritually with tarot. So I don't really use it in that way. And I learned I went through a really horrible breakup, 20 years ago or something, almost 20 years ago. And I was definitely picking cards, basically wanting to be told that one of the tarot told me I was going to be okay. Cause I had so much anxiety. I was sitting in so much anxiety, in the wake of it. And I was getting crazy cards and they weren't even helping me. And I just realized there was something like almost toxic or, about what I was bringing to the cards. And so that's when I really started just doing a 1 card reading. And I'd just be like, I'm all over the place. My readings are all over the place. I can't read the cards well because I'm trying to read too much of what I want to see into them. 1 card, focused, distilled energy. What do I need to be thinking about today? And so it can be good, it can be bad, it doesn't matter. Even if it's a challenging card, you're like, okay, I'm thinking about this energy today. What am I going to do if this energy pops up in my day today? How will I, respond? What will I do to take care of myself? Like it's a lot easier to just look at like a 1 card a day and have that kind of practice, I think, especially when you're in turmoil or crisis or dealing with a raw trauma.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. I really do. And, I think it's also really helpful. I mean, those larger readings are great. I just think that it can be really challenging to give them to yourself when you're in a heightened state and you're really needing something, I think, if it's good to know when you can trust yourself and when you can't, and to go see somebody else and have somebody else read your cards in those moments. Like I give myself big readings, maybe like once or twice a month, like on the new moon, the full moon, but I don't feel like it's not high stakes. It's just more like a check-in. But if I feel like things are very high stakes, I'm going to want an outside opinion.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because it does seem kind of unreasonable to like, consult the tarot for like, yeah, you're going to be great,
Right. Yeah. It's like, yeah, of course, and then also no, like, I don't know, it's complicated and it's more, I was saying this on my tarot show last night that I really love tarot for illuminating the journey. Everyone, largely wants to know, like, am I going to get this thing that I want? Am I going to get it? Is it going to happen? Which is totally understandable, but I'm more interested in like, what's bringing you there? What's that process look like to you? And I learned from reading tarot that, a lot of times we are meant to do counterintuitive things. We're meant to take the path that actually isn't good for us because we need to learn something from it. It's not our spirit's journey isn't just like, we're just zooming towards happiness and material success. Like that's not what it is, and I want happiness and I want material success. That's fine. But there's these other things happening in the meantime. We're having these like spiritual experiences as human beings. And that's really what the tarot picks up and is really helpful for helping us to kind of be aware of and to process.
I like that explanation.
Yeah.
So your show is on Thursday nights, right? Do you do it every week or?
Yeah,
I'm trying to get there.
Yeah, I have 2 shows. One's a live tarot show, and it's on Spotify Green Room. And yeah, it's Thursday nights at 6 Pacific time, 9 Eastern time. And next week it'll be on a Wednesday because of the Thursday holiday here.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it'll be Wednesday. But yeah, and people in the room can raise their hand and I'll pick cards for people. Also, people send questions into my Instagram.
Okay.
So I kind of go back and forth. I'll read an Instagram question, then I'll pick somebody, live. And then I have my podcast, Your Magic, which, we drop a new episode every Monday. And that's a mystical podcast. And we just launched a Patreon that's pretty amazing. I'm going to be doing a book club every month and a witch workshop. And my first witch workshop is tonight.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be like Tarot 101, no dumb questions for tarot, all tarot. The basics, the structure. I'm going to bring out all of my like 40 plus tarot decks and just kind of do a show and tell of like, how decks are different and what it means when they're different. And, I think really helpful if you're shopping for a deck or wondering like what kind of deck is for you. So
that's the kind of thing I would want to know.
Yeah. Right. I know. I always want to know what the new decks are too. So I'm doing that tonight. And then it will be available. It is live, so people could join in if you are a Patreon subscriber. Okay. And then also, if you miss it and you're a Patreon subscriber, it's you can watch it later.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the things I put out there for people, anybody who wanted to ask you a question.
Oh yeah.
If somebody wanted to know what's the sassiest deck you have, which I thought was a really good question.
The sassiest deck. That's so funny. I love that question. Well, what pops into my mind? The Christy Rhodes, The Next World Tarot is pretty sassy. It's like punk revolutionary, like decolonialized, like vibe, like post-apocalyptic. It's very sassy. There's a lot of sassy queers in that deck. There is, I feel like the Modern Witch Tarot is pretty sassy. I know that's a really popular one, and for good reason. It's just like a basic Rider-Waite, but all the characters are like contemporary females, like of many races and body sizes and sort of gender presentations. So that's a really great one. There is, this might sound kind of funny, but there's like a Cosmo Tarot. So it's like Cosmopolitan magazine, right? Yep. But hear me out. Okay, the person who did the deck is Sarah Potter, who's a totally respected, wonderful tarot reader, witch. Like, she's wonderful. And they were smart enough to know that, like, she's important in the tarot sphere, and they brought her in to do it. And it is very sassy, actually. And it's a good deck. It's very sassy. It's great for like romance. It's great for just like not a deep spiritual dive per se, but like a lot of times I find, you're not going to the tarot for a deep spiritual dive. Like, you just want to like check in on something. And sometimes the meaning of the tarot deck can be so dense and obtuse and like mystical that you're like, okay, but like, should I text this person? I just want to know, because sometimes you do want, I just gave a lot of lip service to the spiritual aspect of tarot, but we're all multifaceted people. It's good to have a few decks, and the Cosmo deck is really great if you're just like, should I hit on this person? Or like, should I cut this friend off? Or, like very daily, contemporary problems. It's very sassy.
That was such a good question.
I remembered it. Totally. It was very funny.
So one of the questions I liked that I heard on Sagittarian Matters podcast.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, because it's been a while since I think you were asked this question, but would you still choose the pile of money over making art? Yes. I listened to that and I was like, I love her. It was I think one of the first episodes that came out of that podcast.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Yeah, I would, because I've made a lot of art, which I love, and there's also a lot of other things I'd like to do, but unfortunately you need money to do them, and so I can't do it, like travel the world, or like I would just, if I had a pile of money, I'd travel, and I do think I would be just as happy traveling than I am making art, as I am making art, and I'm like, I'm thinking all things I could do with a pile of money. Yeah. Would I be frustrated to like be traveling the world and feel super inspired and be like, I want to write about this, but I can't because I've made some deal with like, a ghost, I don't know, Satan. But I feel like that's fine because I feel frustrated now that I can't travel the world. So, like, yeah.
I love that. I love that conversation, because people are like,
I know. You're supposed to say the pure thing. Like, no, it's enough just to make art. And and it is. I'm so grateful to be an artist. I'm so grateful. But, I'm also, somebody who's largely a broke artist. And it would be nice to have a pile of money, for sure. Because, definitely. Although I do sometimes recognize that my scarcity issues are such that no pile of money is probably large enough for me to like feel safe,
Right.
So, but maybe a pile of money granted by like a genie would be enough, it would have to be magically replenishing, and then I would be chill.
I assumed that. I assumed it wasn't like Elon Musk, like handing you a pile of money.
Right.
I assumed it was a genie.
Because I burned through that and then I'm fucked again, right? Yeah, totally.
What did I do?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you have a book coming out.
I do.
I'm really excited. Is it memoir, right?
It is memoir. Yeah. Yeah, it's called Knocking Myself Up, a memoir of my in/fertility. And it's about, it starts when I was like 40 and was like, I want to have a baby, but I have no partner, and I don't even know that I believe in romance anymore. And you know, should I just try to get myself pregnant? And the answer was yes. And then as it turned out, you know, it probably would have been a more interesting story if that's how I got pregnant. But as it turned, you know, it's a complicated story, and I wasn't actually like able to get myself pregnant. And then I ended up falling in love with somebody, and, you know, who had a lot of resources that I didn't have. And so we ended up just embarking on this getting pregnant project. So
Wow, I can't
yeah.
wait to read it. I'm actually listening to Valencia now because in the 2021s, you know, we can listen to like Audible.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
so
my
cool.
gosh. Who's reading it? Do you know?
I feel like her name is Abby, maybe. I'll message you because it said in the beginning who it was. It was not you.
I know,
Um,
because I had an agent at the time who was like, Audible is Amazon. Don't do anything with them. The publisher doesn't want you to do it. It was like this moment when people thought, like, publishers thought they could take a stand against Amazon or something. And so I was like, okay. And then I was like, maybe I don't want an agent who's taking a stand against Amazon. I don't know. You know, it's like not somebody else read it and got paid to read it, you know, and
right.
I could have gotten paid to read it, and possibly it could have been, I don't know, maybe, you know, a different experience for people, possibly a preferable one, who knows, you know.
I was really hoping that it was you because I do think that that really does make a difference. Like,
Mhm.
I really recommend my friend Selena Godin wrote this book, Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death, and she reads
Uh-huh.
it in her very beautiful English accent. And you're
Oh,
just like,
wow.
what? I love hearing her voice. And Mia Farrow's book, she reads her book up until like it gets really like crazy with Woody Allen.
Oh, then should somebody else read it?
Which I don't blame her. I'm like,
Yeah, really, way to take care of yourself, Mia Farrow. That's
for
amazing.
real, made a boundary.
Yeah, I did the audiobook for my book Black Wave, and I did my
Okay.
audiobook for my book Against Memoir, which I did Against Memoir during the pandemic. Actually, it was so wild, like the just going into the studio and a little bag for my mask, and everything had to be, you know, decontaminated, and it was wild. But yeah, it's
I'm
fun to
putting that in my notes
cool.
because I want to listen to those. Yeah, it's really cool to hear the author.
Yeah,
Like it's like a layer of like you're in their mind kind of
totally.
way.
Although
Um,
I read in audiobooks differently than I read like live, like if I'm, because I read really fast, which I'm aware of, and I'm just like hyper aware of it when I'm doing this long, where I'm like, it's one thing at a performance where people can maybe be caught up in the energy of it and it's just for like 5 minutes or something, but like for, I had to slow down. So it's like, sometimes it felt hard. I was like, you know, I'm talking at a regular pace, but for me, it felt like I was talking like this, you know. And the engineer's like, no, you're still actually talking rather fast. So
oh my god.
yeah.
Oh my god, that's funny.
Yeah.
Do you have any altar spaces in your house? I'm just
Yeah, I
curious.
have one right behind me.
I
I don't know
kind
if
of
you
thought
can
so.
see. It's like, it's right there.
Oh, cool.
It's just on top of a bookshelf. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that stuff hanging above it is just some sage that I picked, and like a necklace that my son made, and like an evil eye repeller.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I like knowing about that because,
Yeah.
you know, it just actually, I think you'd be a really good death midwife, honestly, because
Thank
it's, you
you.
know, I mean, sure. I think, you know, it's like it just makes sense, like the way you were describing spirituality and tarot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like death midwife really it just means like witch, you know, in a very like safe way. So you're
Yeah,
not like, hi, I'm a witch. I'm coming to your house.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I'm super interested in that. I have so much respect for that profession. I feel like, you know, my mother as a geriatric nurse and a super Scorpio, I've often thought like she's kind of like that. It doesn't have the structure and support of a proper, you know, death doula, you know, I know, training and
Mhm.
philosophy, you know, and community. It's so Western, but like that's kind of like what she ended up doing. So much of her work was sort of like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Life
that's like a
care.
relatively new thing. You
Yeah,
know, these
totally.
programs
Yep.
are born out of necessity,
Hmm.
and yeah, basically, I would pretty much consider anyone who's done the work already is, you know, basically a a deaf midwife without the, certificate from a program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if we have any questions before
Okay.
I let you go drive. Somebody said Valencia was the first book of yours I read. Chelsea Whistle #2, so long ago. Thanks.
Thank you for reading them.
I don't see any questions, but someone said, oh, my wife, she wrote, I love that message about learning about tarot, taking the path that is arduous because we need to learn something.
Yeah.
So true.
It's really true. It's really, really true. And it just, chalk it up to the mystery of life, like, I don't know why.
Right.
It's like doesn't excuse bad things from happening, but often if these certain bad things didn't happen, these certain good things wouldn't have happened. So it's a mystery, right?
Yeah. And someone did ask, how does one know which tarot deck is right for them, or does it kind of manifest itself? Using itself as myself as an example, I hadn't had a great draw to do tarot until I came across a steampunk tarot card at a garage sale, and I haven't used them yet because I'm warming them up. I must have them for a reason.
Yeah, you do. I just think, tarot cards are also works of art, right? They're art objects, and it's totally fine to pick one that appeals to you aesthetically. It's like, then you'll relate to those images. You'll want to look at them. You'll want to dive deeper into them and understand them. So, I think that it's just everybody has a different aesthetic. And so whatever you feel drawn to, I think it's safe to follow that. And you might end up with, a few different decks. I mean, I'm a hoarder. I have a lot of decks, and it doesn't help that, like you, Moon, people send me decks, and I'm like, thank you. But like, I have so many of them.
Give them to me.
But even if you're just not a hoarder, you might want 2 or 3 different decks, that have like significantly different styles, or just significantly different structures from each other, to learn or to satisfy, because you'll change also, right? It's like a deck that really appeals to you at one point in your life it might be an aesthetic that you don't feel as connected to 10 years later, you might want to try something. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it reveals different parts of yourself.
Definitely.
Somebody asked, can you post a link about how to get into your Patreon and tarot event tonight? But that's like on your IG, right?
Yeah, it should be on my IG or on Your Magic's. This is Your Magic. That's my, and if you just go to patreon.com, I think it's Patreon, / Your Magic, or This Is Your Magic. One of my coworkers set it up, so I'm not 100% sure, but you can find it. It's there, Patreon, Your Magic. And if you sign up at the tier that allows for that, then I'll see you tonight.
So cool.
See you whenever you watch it. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I love moments where I get to show my tarot decks because I feel like less of a hoarder. I'm like, see, I'm using them. That's the definition of hoarding, right? It's like you're not actually using the things that you're amassing. So
you're an artist. You have to have all of your,
yeah,
all of your talismans.
Thank you. It's true.
Before I let you go, I have a deck of cards that someone very kindly gave me because I hate saying goodbye. It's a very Gemini thing. I do have a Sag moon.
Oh, so. Me too.
What's your sun sign?
Aquarius.
Oh, okay.
So we're both air with Sag moons. What's your rising?
Scorpio.
Oh, okay, cool. I was catching water. I was catching some sort of water. I'm a Leo rising.
Oh, well, I love Leos.
I love Scorpios. Yeah.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All of those signs, Aquarian, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Leo, those are some of my favorites. And if anyone's listening.
And Gemini, I love Gemini. Gemini is such a great sign. It's such a fun sign. You guys are maligned, but I love you guys. You're like bright lights. You're like little, it's like you're Hermes or Mercury or Pan, like you're the trickster god.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that. Someone else is like, hello, fellow Gemini. Hello. We can't stop talking. That's our one thing. But that's why I wrote to you, the Sag, when I was like, hey, we've never met before. We've been talking about meeting. Let's meet on this International Death Festival.
Right? Oh my God. It's so perfect.
It is so perfect. And I hope I get to interview you again for my podcast.
Oh, I would love that.
And someday we'll have dinner. And
Yes.
I already have a plan to bring over that amazing Filipino ice cream. You know that place near you that's like, it's really cute. It's this, yeah, there's this great place my friends took me to. And I was like already thinking about that. 'Cause I'm like, I think it's in Atwater Village.
Oh, wow. Oh, is it called Afters?
It's something cute. I don't remember it right now, but I'll message it to you later.
Okay. There's so much to what I love about LA is that it is so big and so sprawling, and that means there's so much to explore.
I know.
And there's like
so great.
so much. I've been here since like 2015, and I feel like I still don't even know where anything is.
Understandable. I mean, well, we've only been here for 3 years, so you know, we come up often to visit, you know, and get culture out of the, you know, out of this little interesting pocket. But anyway, I drew 3 cards, and I'm like, I want to know all of them. But what's your secret talent?
What's my secret talent?
It was the Joker card too.
I think my cooking and blowjobs.
Okay.
Not secret, but just not known to everyone.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the other ones are like, well, I like this one too. And since I'm a Gemini, I think it's important to have 2 questions. How would you like to be remembered? And that could just be a bridge off of the last.
I guess, you know, I'd like to be remembered for my work, I guess, you know, both like the written work and the cultural work that I've done. Yeah, definitely.
I think you obviously will be. I mean, you know, I couldn't have predicted that we'd be here talking today, you know, during this weird time period of virtual existence. I'm so delighted.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate it because this was like the best way to start this festival for me personally.
Well, that's so sweet. And I love being involved in something like this. It's such a cool festival. And I feel like, you know, Western culture has barely begun to deal with death. And like all these people who are part of this conference, and the conference itself is like the forefront of such a really important movement. So
it's so true.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love too. The people who are organizing it, you know, they're just doing it because they just know that it's needed and it's a way of connecting, which is, So I'm really excited.
Thank you, organizers. Yeah, it's so cool. Is it going to be in person next year?
I would love that. I said we could all come to England, but they're like, no, we want to come to California. Which,
okay, fair.
Right, fair enough. Yeah. Just like spread it on down the coastline.
Right. So great. Cool.
So I'll keep you posted. If this recording works out that I get to keep it, I'll of course send it to you.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sending you a lot of love, you know, anyway, but thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Everyone's like, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Real treat.
Cool.
Until next time.
Enjoy your until soon.
Until soon.
Okay. I will.
Anytime.
Okay, cool.
Bye.
Bye-bye.